Let's talk about what happened during the government shutdown, why it happened, what it cost us, what happened with the debt ceiling, and then let's talk about the implications. But first, let's talk about the deal that was reached. So last night, 2 nights ago, the Senate made a deal on the budget, and in order to raise the debt ceiling to fund the government through February 7th, as well as reopening the government until January 15th. So Senate is mainly Democrat. It has a majority of Democrats instead of Republicans, as opposed to the House, which is Republican majority. So the Senate sent the bill to the House, and there was 2 hours left before they had to vote. And at that point, it was either the Republicans, because it's GOP centric in the House, either voted for the bill or let the world economy crash because of how much debt we owe to the rest of the world, as well as how closely linked our economy is to the rest of the world. Now, sure.
Sorry. So
Just speak about it.
did each branch, did the Senate and the House, do they want to send a bill last, so the other person will have to compromise with that bill, or else go default?
No.
Was the plan they had? Or?
The thing that happened was because the Senate is Democratic mainly, that meant that in the House that the Democrats were going to vote for the budget bill, right? Meaning that it's left up to the Republicans to refuse the budget bill, which meant that probably the worst economic crisis in America's history would have been caused by the 2013 Republican Party.
But did the House try to make a bill also to send the Senate? So maybe the Senate would have to?
Yeah, they tried earlier in the week, but they want to shut them down because it didn't reopen the government, right? So what happened then was that the Republicans were forced to, or else they would have forced to vote for the bill, or else they would have caused the largest economic crisis in America.
What would that have to do with the Obamacare?
What do you mean?
The government shutdown, not Obamacare.
Okay, so with the government shutdown, what happened was, and this isn't, the government shutdown wasn't necessarily the fault of the Republican Party, but the Republican Party was in the position to isolate choices for the way the budget battle went down. So what they did was they tied the individual mandate, the delay of the individual mandate, to the continuing resolution to keep the government open. The Congress has to appropriate funds for the fiscal year for government in something called continuing resolution. Even though in 1974 they're like, okay, we're going to actually appropriate funds in the government through 12 separate bills throughout the year. But now they just do it since 1994. They've been doing it through something called a continuing resolution, which is just a resolution to continue spending at its current levels, right? So what happened there is in order to finally corner Obama and the Democrats on Obamacare, the Republicans leveraged the individual mandate, which is essentially the part of the Affordable Care Act that says in order to receive, you have to get insurance, or else you're going to be taxed. So that's the individual mandate, right? And they wanted the individual mandate to be delayed another year. It's supposed to go into effect at the end of this year. So what they did is they said, the Republicans all said, we're not going to vote on any bills to continue the government unless the individual mandate is delayed for another year. So what happens then is the Republicans are the ones voting to keep the government open, because tied to the budget bill is the delay of the individual mandate. The Democrats aren't going to accept that. So in the Republicans' mind, the public would just see Republicans trying to keep the government open and Democrats shutting down the bill to shut down the government. So they either get what they want or they get none of the blame. But Democrats called their bluff and let the government shut down, which is kind of like what Clinton did when Newton was Speaker of the House. So this actually turned into a victory for the Democrats because the Republicans were forced to vote for a budget bill, and the Democrats were able to, one, not only humiliate the Republican Party in the attack base, but to show that the Republican Party engineered the shutdown, right? But let's talk about what this means for the Republican Party. The Republican Party, since 2008, has become increasingly more radicalized because of the Republicans, but mainly because of the Tea Party movement. What happens when you have the Tea Party movement introduced into the Republican Party is you have a disparity in between the political ideology of the Reagan Republicans, who are more moderate Republicans, and the extreme right-wing Tea Parties. But let's talk about who the Tea Party are and where they came from. So, when Obama won in 2008, there was a lot of discontent in the country. And so a lot of people organized together to form what's known today as the broad-based political movement as the Tea Party. In case you don't know, the Tea Party isn't actually a party, it's a wing of the Republican Party that happens to be more radical. The Tea Party is more of a decentralized movement. So there's different types of Tea Parties. There's like a Glenn Beck one Tea Party, there's other Tea Parties, but basically it's decentralized and there's no solid Tea Party. And there's disagreement over how the Tea Party came to form. There's two views. There's one, that this is a perfect example of grassroots democracy in America, which is essentially just from the bottom up. Or two, it's a perfect example of corporate interests at play in something called astroturfing. Let's talk about astroturfing. Astroturfing is the concept where a corporation or business interest uses the mass of grassroots movement in order to remove the stigma involved with corporate lobbying through the mass of grassroots movement. So some people describe the Tea Party as a form of astroturfing because the Tea Party has had a lot of help from industries such as the Coke industries, who are the six richest people in the world. Just this year, there's a study released by it's called Tobacco Control. It's this obviously left-leaning journal, and it's talking about how a lot of the funding that comes from Tea Parties and from the original Tea Parties comes from tobacco-linked nonprofit organizations and organizations such as the Koch brothers' Citizens for a Sound Economy, which is today, it's split up, this Citizens for a Sound Economy, into the group we know as today, Americans for Prosperity, which is one of the largest political lobbying groups in the country. Well, not one of them. They are the largest political lobbying group in the country, and a lot of people contribute the 2010 Republican takeover of the Congress, because prior to 2010 we didn't have such a large majority of Republicans in the Congress, although it's reduced in the 2012 election, to Americans for Prosperity. Americans for Prosperity is a nonprofit that's made up about $40 million as net worth, and they contribute about $6 million in campaign contributions to the 2012 campaign. So the Tea Parties are mainly, one thing that they all agree on is that they want to keep the Constitution as their central dogma, right? So they want to say, if it's not in the Constitution, the government shouldn't do it, kind of advocating for a strict interpretation of the Constitution. So something that's interesting is I saw, that the Koch brothers had a large hand in the formation of political in the Tea Parties, and I've mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. I've encountered this. They have a lot of youth groups that are all connected in one way or another to the Koch brothers. For example, I went to this Liberty group this summer called the Bill of Rights Academy. It's a non-partisan academy focused on the Constitution, which happens to be Tea Party's views. Not that it's a Tea Party's organization, but it was founded by one of the Koch brothers and continues to receive funding for being a nonprofit. And there's a bunch of other groups like Foundation for Economic Education, the Humane Institute, which are all in some way or another connected to the Koch brothers. So there's an interesting network that kind of targets the youth and people who are motivated by political ideology as opposed to pragmatism, which isn't to say Tea Parties aren't necessarily pragmatic, but they're more ideologically fervent, I guess, and kind of like targets these demographics.